In this video, we're going to give you our honest advice about picking and prepping your very first overland vehicle.
A good portion of advice that you see on social media that's given to people that are just getting started is, for the most part, a bunch of crap. We're going to break it down to what you really need to get started and what you definitely don't need.
I bet you'll be surprised by what we're about to tell you. Watch this before falling for all the overland hype, advertising, and terrible advice that's out there.
This series of videos we're producing is to help you navigate through all the BS and snobbery about overlanding.
We'll be adding new episodes often, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when we do upload one. So before we get started, we just wanted to point out that there's a big difference between an overlanding vehicle and an off-road rig.
For some reason, for the last 5 years or so, the two have been treated as the same, and they are definitely not.
When off-roading, we're putting our vehicle to its limits. Something is definitely going to bend or break.
When overlanding, we're very careful not to break anything. The last thing we want is to spoil our trip while waiting for parts to be delivered and repairs made.
So, we avoid damage or breakage whenever possible.
Your thoughts on overlanding can be whatever you want them to be. The basic goal, though, is to explore your country or the world, to seek out beautiful sights, eat delicious foods, and meet wonderfully different people. And if traveling off pavement is included, that's great fun too.
So to get started, which vehicle is the best?
Look out your window and see what's in your driveway or in your garage. Even if it's a four-door sedan, a minivan, whatever. We hear way too often people say that I can't start overlanding because I don't have the right rig or I don't have my rig fully built yet. That's nonsense. Don't waste time waiting to get the vehicle of your dreams. Life is way too short for that. Even if what you have is a two-wheel drive, use it, get out there, see where you want to go. Now, if you want to go in places where your two-wheel drive can't take you, then you're going to want to up your game to a four-wheel drive to get through the mud and sand and through the rocks.
But if you're in the market for something, consider this. A brand new vehicle will give you a clean slate, all new parts, so you'll have few, if any, breakdowns. But they come at an extremely high cost. A slightly used late model is definitely cheaper out of pocket, and there's good availability for used parts. The slight downside is the original parts are beginning to wear out. So there's going to be that expense to get it back to like new working order. An older used vehicle is by far the cheapest option. There's plenty of cheap parts available, but depending on the previous owner, everything has the potential of being worn out. So you'll be looking at a good amount of money and time to regain reliability.
Whatever you choose, don't go overboard on it. Ignore the Instagram pics. Most of the built rigs you see on Instagram are way overbuilt. And be honest with yourself. Decide where you're going to start. Overlanding can range from just visiting your local state park on the weekend to really hardcore remote travel. Regardless, most of your travel is going to be on Forest Service roads and BLM roads, so a stock vehicle will likely do just fine.
Let's talk a little about size.
The sheer size of a vehicle will limit where you can go, mostly the width and the height. Our advice is to go as small as possible, but still be able to haul all your gear and your family. And just because we can haul a lot of stuff doesn't mean we should. Bulk and weight should always be a major concern for you.
Weight is your enemy. Too much on your vehicle will give you terrible gas mileage, make it handle badly, wear out parts much faster, and get you stuck easier. Also, keep the weight you do put on as low as possible. The worst place to put heavy items is on the roof.
That high center of gravity is going to make things really uncomfortable and even dangerous when driving on uneven surfaces.
What about hybrid or electric vehicles?
Hybrid would work fine since they have that gas engine to charge the batteries and provide propulsion. Electric, or more accurately named battery-powered vehicles, in my opinion, is a no-go. The range they get just isn't there yet. They definitely won't work for us. Maybe they will for you if you don't go very far and you don't need that range, but definitely won't work for us.
How about diesel?
They probably shouldn't listen to me because I am very biased and opinionated about diesels. My career or day job for the past 35 years has been in trucking and heavy construction, where diesel is king. I will not own a personal car or truck with a diesel engine. They're noisy, smelly, and the RPM range that they operate in is just not suitable for a lightweight vehicle. But that's just my opinion. If you want a diesel, get a diesel.
What are other things to consider?
If gas mileage is a big concern for you, consider like a Toyota RAV4, Honda Element, something small like that. Subarus. You won't have the cargo space or the low range transfer case like you would in a SUV or a pickup truck, but you will save a lot of money on fuel. Are you planning on towing a trailer? Check the towing capacity of that vehicle. It may look like it can pull a heavy trailer, but looks can be deceiving. It's always best to follow your manufacturer's recommendation. In the future, do you plan on adding aftermarket parts to it, like skid plates, a roof rack, steel bumpers? The more obscure makes and models may not have that aftermarket support, so you may be limited there. Something that's very important is the availability of replacement or repair parts. If you should happen to break down out in the middle of nowhere, will the local parts store have it covered? What are the odds that Ray's Auto Parts out in Lick Creek, Montana will have a replacement water pump for a Porsche Cayenne, or however you say that, or a Range Rover? Also, have common-sized tires. Something any tire store will likely have in stock or in their nearby warehouse. One last thing about parts and modifying your vehicle. Every mechanical system on your vehicle has a weak point, whether it's the steering, suspension, or even the drivetrain. For example, if you hit something hard, the tie rods should break before the steering rack does. It's a lot easier to just replace a tie rod end than the entire steering rack, and a lot less expensive. Same with our Toyota's front drivetrain. I would much rather replace a CV axle out in the middle of nowhere than a ring and pinion. So before you start modifying a vehicle, keep that in mind and don't beef up one thing that will put extra stress on something else that you don't want to have to replace.
So they acquired a vehicle. What's next?
Reliability should be your number one concern. The last thing you want to do is break down and have to make a repair when you're out having fun.
Well, that's for sure.
First, focus on preventative maintenance. Fluids, brakes, hoses, belts, all that. Some makes and models are inherently more reliable than others. Research your specific vehicle for things that you may need to pay closer attention to. Something else to keep in mind, because you'll be driving in more harsh conditions, dustier, bouncing around, working the suspension harder, you'll need to make that scheduled routine maintenance more often. And before and after every trip, get underneath and make sure nothing has come loose or has fallen off.
The second most important thing to focus on is tires.
You're probably going to want a set with slightly aggressive tread.
Something to keep in mind, the more aggressive the tread, the noisier they're going to be. If you live in a colder climate, make sure they're snow and ice rated.
We have Cooper mud terrain tires on our FJ Cruiser, and they are phenomenal, crawling over rocks and going through mud, but they are absolutely horrible on packed snow and ice. They get virtually no traction. Heavier or thicker sidewalls have pros and cons. A pro is they'll last longer when consistently running them at low pressure. The drawback is they are heavier. You'll get worse gas mileage, and a lot of times they'll ride rough and maybe even vibrate a little bit until they get some heat built up into them. When deciding which tires are best for your application, start out with a list of honest needs. Sure, aggressive mud terrains look really cool, but for most purposes, they're very impractical.
But they look cool as hell.
They do. Another thing to consider, when asking for tire advice in a Facebook group, keep in mind that the best tire is going to be the ones that they're running. And what they need them for may likely not be what you need them for. The best advice you can get is probably from a tire store.
Letting air out or airing down is sometimes necessary for better traction, for a better ride on gravel, and probably most important, less chance of puncture from sharp rocks and debris. Before you get back on pavement and drive at a higher speed, you must air back up though. The first piece of gear you'll want is a portable air compressor like this.
Our advice is pick a unit that instead of plugging into a typical 12-volt outlet on your dash, get one that has the clips that go directly onto your car battery. These typically have more power and will air up your tires much faster. Next up, get off of YouTube and get that vehicle out on some adventures.
Experience will dictate what you need to do to your vehicle to fit your style of overlanding.
In our next episode, we'll talk to you about modifications that you may want to do to your vehicle and some modifications you should not do to your vehicle.
And we'll have episodes on tents, cooking, route planning, all sorts of stuff.
And if you want to see more, we hope you consider subscribing, hit that bell notification, hit the like button, leave a comment. Thanks for watching.